Relax, we're not married, I don't owe you faithfulness, he said like it was a punchline, not a confession. His phone was still glowing between us, the screen crowded with messages that didn't bother to hide what they were. I remember the hum of the fridge, the ticking clock on the wall, the way his voice stayed casual, almost bored, while my chest went quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't ask for explanations I already understood. I looked at him the way you look at a stranger who's just shown you exactly who they are. He smirked, confident I'd stay. Confident I'd negotiate my dignity for his comfort. Instead, I picked up my bag and walked out without a word. No slammed door. No dramatic goodbye. Just silence, clean and final. He thought freedom meant no consequences. He was wrong. I wasn't new to being underestimated. People had always mistaken my calm for compliance, my patience for permission. With him, it started gently. Small dismissals disguised as jokes, late replies explained away as busy, boundaries treated like suggestions. I noticed everything. I just didn't announce it. We weren't married, he reminded me often, as if commitment only counted when paperwork was involved. I had met him during a season when I believed consistency mattered more than labels, when showing up felt like enough. I invested quietly. Time, attention, emotional labor he accepted without question. He grew comfortable in that imbalance. Before him, I'd learned the cost of speaking too loudly for people who weren't listening. I'd learned that explaining your worth to someone determined to minimize it only makes them bolder. So I adapted. I became observant. Strategic. I stored moments the way some people store apologies, and used but ready. He thought I needed him. Thought I would negotiate respect just to keep him close. Thought silence meant weakness. What he never understood was this: I was never staying because I couldn't leave. I was staying because I was deciding when. The disrespect didn't arrive all at once. It slipped in quietly, dressed as carelessness. A name lighting up his phone that made him turn the screen face down. A pause before answering simple questions, just long enough to feel deliberate. He'd smile while doing it, like nothing in his world required urgency except himself. He stopped asking how my day was, but still expected me to listen to his. Compliments turned into comparisons. "You're not the jealous type," he'd say, watching my face closely, as if daring me to prove him wrong. When I didn't react, he relaxed. That was his mistake. At dinners, his attention drifted past me toward his phone. His laughter came a second too late, eyes still scanning messages meant for someone else. When I spoke, he nodded without hearing, fingers tapping replies I wasn't supposed to notice. Sometimes he'd tease me in front of others, harmless, he claimed. "She's so chill," he'd say, hand on my shoulder like a label. I felt myself being reduced to a trait he could exploit. Each moment was small, forgettable on its own. Together, they formed a pattern I could no longer ignore. The turning point wasn't explosive. It was quiet, almost ordinary. I was sitting across from him when his phone buzzed again, and this time he didn't bother to hide it. The message preview flashed on the screen, too familiar, too intimate to misread. He caught my glance and didn't flinch. That was when I understood something with unsettling clarity. He wasn't careless. He was confident. Confident that I'd stay. Confident that my silence meant consent. I felt the last excuse fall away. Not anger, relief. The kind that comes when a question finally answers itself. I didn't need proof, closure, or a final conversation to make sense of it. I needed alignment with myself. He started talking, explaining nothing in particular, his words floating past me like background noise. I watched his mouth move and realized I'd already left him emotionally. The version of me that waited, hoped, adjusted, she was done. In that moment, I made a decision that felt irreversible and calm. I would not compete for attention that was given away so easily. I would not demand loyalty from someone proud of withholding it. I stood up, collected my things, and chose silence, not as retreat but as strategy. I didn't rush. Revenge, I'd learned, fails when it's emotional. I gave myself distance first, space to think clearly, to let the noise settle. While he sent messages pretending concern, I reorganized my life with precision. I reviewed everything I had quietly built while he was busy underestimating me. My work contacts. My reputation. The social circles where I had been introduced as his partner, never as my own person. I corrected that without confrontation, updating profiles, reconnecting with people directly, removing him from the center of my narrative. I closed the doors he still thought were open. Shared subscriptions canceled. Access revoked. Plans he assumed included him quietly dissolved. I didn't block him, I simply became unavailable. Silence is far more unsettling when it's intentional. I spoke only where it mattered, to myself, to my future. I invested more hours into my career, my routines, my body, my peace. Not to prove anything, but to realign power. Detachment sharpened my focus. There was no dramatic announcement. No warning shot. Just a gradual disappearance from the role he'd taken for granted. By the time he realized something had shifted, everything he relied on, my attention, my loyalty, my emotional labor, was already gone. The payoff arrived without my involvement. That was the most satisfying part. One evening, weeks later, my phone lit up with his name after days of silence. I let it ring. Not out of spite, out of indifference. When I finally listened to the voicemail, his voice was unfamiliar. Tight. Uncertain. Stripped of its usual ease. He said he missed me. Said things felt off. Asked if we could talk, really talk, this time. I didn't respond. Word reached me through mutual friends first. He'd started asking about me casually, then not so casually. Had I moved? Was I seeing someone? Why wasn't I replying? The confidence he once wore so comfortably was gone, replaced by visible unease. He lingered longer in conversations, laughed too hard, checked his phone too often. When he finally saw me in public, the shift was unmistakable. His eyes searched my face for familiarity and found none. I was calm. Polite. Brief. I spoke to others with ease, my attention no longer orbiting him. That's when it landed. Not with anger, but with loss. He had mistaken access for entitlement. Now he had neither. And I didn't need to say a word to make him understand. The fallout was subtle, but it rippled outward. People noticed his restlessness before they noticed my absence. Friends who once excused his behavior began asking quieter questions, why he seemed distracted, why his stories no longer lined up. The charm that had protected him thinned without someone steadying it behind the scenes. I, on the other hand, became clearer in other people's eyes. Without drama or explanation, my boundaries spoke for me. Invitations came directly to me now. Conversations shifted. I was no longer an accessory to his life, I was a presence in my own right. Reputation, I learned, isn't built by defending yourself, it's built by consistency. The real consequence, though, lived in the private spaces. He reached out more often, messages longer, apologies clumsier. He asked for reassurance he'd never offered. For faithfulness he'd once mocked. Each unanswered attempt forced him to sit with the imbalance he'd created. This mattered because it wasn't about him losing me, it was about me reclaiming myself. Anyone can walk away in anger. Few can do it without spectacle, without self-betrayal. The audience should care because this isn't revenge fueled by cruelty. It's consequence shaped by self-respect. In the quiet that followed, I found something steadier than satisfaction. Peace doesn't announce itself. It settles in slowly, like realizing you can breathe again without effort. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, stopped wondering if I'd asked for too much. The answer had always been no. I didn't become colder. I became clearer. I learned that loyalty offered to the wrong person doesn't make you noble, it makes you invisible. Walking away without begging, explaining, or punishing allowed me to keep the parts of myself that mattered most intact. The future feels deliberate now. I choose relationships where faithfulness isn't negotiated, where presence isn't rationed. I trust my instincts faster. I leave sooner. And I no longer confuse silence with weakness, mine or anyone else's. As for him, I hear he's still asking about me. Still trying to rewrite the ending in his favor. I don't correct the story. Some lessons require solitude to land. I didn't take revenge by destroying him. I took it by refusing to be diminished again. And in that refusal, I became untouchable.